Hello and welcome to Digless, a podcast by the Quarry. Just remember you can stay up to date with all the latest news and insights over on our website, so please subscribe. Today we're going to be talking to Dan Wood from Inso about their Guernsey Innovation Report. To all get underway, and if you can just begin by a bit of scene setting for us. Who are Inso? What are you doing? And what's this report about?
Great. Well. Thanks. First, thanks for having me on the podcast, Nick. It's really nice to be on the other side of podcasts as well, having run my own now for just over a year. And Inso, in a nutshell, is an innovation consultancy and global network. There's kind of two sides to the business, I say. On the one side, we offer innovation as a service, and that's a horribly overused corporate buzzword, I know. What does that mean practically? It's helping clients, and those clients can be anyone from startups through to multinationals, through to governments, to the military, to university accelerators, to non-university accelerators. Anyone who does innovation or needs to be more innovative, we can support with. And that often manifests itself as helping someone bring a tangible idea that they've got to reality, whether that's through problem analysis, turning that into a prototype, to designing that prototype and building it, through to testing it, through to iterating it, and ultimately creating new things that are pushed out into the world. Or it can be helping people build an innovative system across their organization. So this could be a business that has hit a certain maturity and maybe feels like it's lost its startup agility or its innovative approach to things. Maybe it's a bit stalled, maybe it's stagnant, maybe it needs to evolve, but it doesn't quite know which direction to go. So we help them build an innovative system that allows them to innovate faster with speed, direction, and confidence. So that's the one side of the business. And then on the other side of the business, because we sit in the middle of this and we don't always have the answers, there are things we can do for people, but there are things that we can't do for people. And so we need and wanted to be able to connect experts to our clients. So we fostered and built a global network of curious people, leaders, innovators from different backgrounds, different countries, different sectors, different life experiences, different cultures, kind of any variable of diversity I want on the community and network side of Inso, because that builds a truly collective intelligence. And again, we can sit in the middle, and if a client of ours has got a problem with AI, we can connect them with an AI expert. If they've got a problem with leadership coaching, we can connect them to leadership coaches, or anything like any variable of diversity. I want to be able to act as a catalyst for my clients. So the Inso in itself is a truly diverse collective intelligence of innovation, inspiration. But Inso in itself is very much about action, because we can talk about innovation all day. We can attend workshops, conferences, have conversations about good ideas. But unless we actually roll up our sleeves and do it, which INSO stands for like innovative solutions or innovation solved, a bunch of acronyms or words that fit it. It's very much about rolling up our sleeves and turning ideas into action. If like that's the one thing I want Inso to do. I want it to be a catalyst for people to have the confidence to actually try new things, experiment with new ideas, understand that you're going to fail, but if you're not failing, you're not growing, and if you're not growing, you're not innovating. So, very much want Inso, and this probably segues on nicely to the report. It's very important for us that Inso follows through on its promise to deliver action and not just talk about innovation.
Okay, so coming to the report, why Guernsey? And why does Guernsey need an innovation report? There's lots of stuff already happening, isn't there, in the background?
Yeah, I think for us, it's as a Guernsey registered company, and as a Guernsey boy myself. My father's side of the family is from Guernsey, so Guernsey for me has always been a place, very special place in my heart, a place that I have dipped in and out of throughout my whole life, whether that's living there or visiting family and friends. Guernsey for me has and always will be a special place. And so registering a business there, and registering an innovation business in particular, feels very poignant for me, because I genuinely care about the future of Guernsey. Like, I don't live there right now. I left because my wife is Czech, and we decided to move back to the Czech Republic so that she could be closer to her family and give birth to our second child. But Guernsey is a place that I want to see thrive. I want to see innovate. I want to see stay relevant, and I want to see maintain its local charm. And I think the report, for me and for Alex, who's the co-founder of Inso, we wanted to do something within our power and within our resources to lead by example with innovation. So again, we were having these conversations in isolation, whether that was formally with people and clients or informally with people at dinners and at Christie's coffee shop, and talking about the future of the island and what's good about the island and what's bad about the island. Of course, everyone likes to moan about the negatives. And we were having these conversations in isolation, and the same things were popping up, like, oh, Guernsey's innovating too slow, Guernsey's not doing enough, Jersey's moving faster, the rest of the world's moving faster, finance is doomed, things need to change, but nothing will change. In fact, one of the people I spoke to when pulling the report together was like, I love what you're doing, really, really powerful, great initiative. But just so you know, you're pushing a very, very, very big rock up a very, very, very steep hill when you're trying to get any change done. And I like to think, and maybe that's true, but the ever positive person in me says, well, that's a challenge that I think we can't ignore. I think innovation is always hard. It's never easy. And so I'm willing to help at least nudge that rock a little bit further up the hill. And if the way I can do that is to consolidate all these conversations I'm having in a report that says what needs to be said, not in an overly negative way. We didn't want the report to be doom and gloom. We wanted it to be a challenge to be solved together. And in the innovation world and in my facilitation world, there's a really neat trick called How Might We? And How Might We is a part of a process where you take a pain point or a problem that is typically negative and you reframe that problem or pain point as a how might we statement. So for example, it could be something like, Guernsey is not innovative enough. That's a negative, flat, dead statement. And a lot of people say, yeah, true, great. That's it, done. But if we reframe that single phrase into a how might we help Guernsey become more innovative, it's an inviting problem to be solved. And so we wanted the report to be that sort of framing, highlighting what needs to be said, drawn out not just through our own perspectives and opinions, but from a broad, diverse, I like to think, true representation of innovation across the island. We spoke to not just finance, not just government, not just senior people. We brought in different ages, different perspectives, different sectors, different industry. We tried to connect grassroots innovation with kind of institutional level innovation across the island. We even looked beyond the island. It's why the second forward was written by Island Innovation, James Eltmore. He's the CEO. I mean, he literally runs a global network of islands that are solving similar problems. And so one of the other key findings in the report was that Guernsey needs to be more comfortable looking outwards in order to solve inward problems. We need to be okay with learning from other places that are doing the same thing, sharing our vulnerabilities, sharing our pain points, spotting those opportunities for collaboration. And yeah, sorry, I'm rambling here because I know we want to get into it. But one of the other things there was, how does Guernsey remain competitive on a global innovation viewpoint, whilst also maintaining what makes Guernsey Guernsey, and that is its local charm, its trust, its Guernseyisms, and all the things that make Guernsey special. Because what we don't want to do is try and compete with the likes of Dubai and be another major global hub that actually then, at the expense of Guernsey, losing its uniqueness.
Before we dive into the report and the details there, what is innovation to you? Because it can be a bit of a buzz phrase, can't it?
Yeah. It's a huge buzz phrase. Like, actually, yeah, it's well timed because I've just delivered my TEDx in Prague on this exact question. So for me, innovation is not just technology. It's not just one project done well. Innovation is a way of thinking and a system. So if you're innovating to solve a specific problem, this applies equally to if you're trying to build innovation as a culture within a group of people, an organization, a team, whatever, doesn't really matter. So my definition of innovation is that innovation is a combination. It's an equation comprised of leadership plus people plus technology plus context. And so to break that down further, I think leaders, it's their job to set the right environment and conditions which allow innovation and creativity to thrive within their organization or whatever their sphere of influence is. And this isn't just setting a physical environment. So I'm thinking like, blue sky thinking. Humans are more creative when we're not in a little cage. So if your office feels like an oppressive cage, that's going to kill innovation, even if you put the most innovative people in that room. So not only it's a leader's job to set the right physical environment for innovation, but also to give and create the psychological safety for their team to innovate properly. And there's a bunch of things here that they need to do to achieve this. One, not micromanage, allow people to help be a part of the solution to things, don't dictate. Provide a psychological safety net which allows for failure. We all talk a good game about failure, and when we talk to businesses, one of the first questions I ask is, okay, tell me about the top 5 failures that you did recently. And most people can't answer that because we fear failure so much, and we want to, even if we have failed, there's this innate human tendency to not want to share that failure because we need to appear to be on top of it all the time and super professional, and of course we never get anything wrong. But I think unless we're willing to openly share and admit our failures, then we're never really going to be innovative. And if the leaders don't create the conditions which allow their people to do that same thing, then innovation won't happen out of fear of failure. So leadership have a really, really important job right at the start if they want to see innovation thrive within their thing. The next part is people, because people need to be incentivized and motivated to actually want to change. And here you start to get into change management theory and things like that. But innovation does inherently involve change. And people tend to not to like change too much, especially not too much change at any one given moment. So I say also innovation, if you're very innovative, you can imagine a new future that some people can't even see. That's like the dreamers out there who can just picture a new way of doing things. But practical innovation is about getting people there in small steps. Very few people are willing to just jump to a new way of doing things. And that makes sense, right? Because if I've got a job and a stable income and I've spent years learning this one process, I don't want it to change too much because that's energy, that's more work for me. That's going to distract from all the other things I want to be doing and blah, 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 blah. So how do people innovate and how do groups of people innovate? It's about maximizing strengths, not forcing people to do the things that inherently they're not that good at or they don't want to be doing. It's about incentivizing, motivating teams to work together. And again, the cross collaboration of teams and breaking down of silos comes under the people strand. The amount of times I see innovation fail because two groups of people, two silos, just haven't spoken. And actually, if they did in a more vulnerable, less kind of strict way than we tend to talk in meetings and Zoom calls and things like that, and actually, again, expose a bit of vulnerability, express our pain points, come up with ideas, come up with quirky ideas, come up with status quo ideas, and work out what change looks like for that team. I think that in itself, if we could crack that, would unlock a lot more innovation. But so far we've got leadership setting the conditions, people who are incentivized and motivated to change. The third strand is technology, because of course technology does touch most problems that we're trying to solve. I think a lot of people think that innovation is just jumping straight to the next mobile app or the next next system or the next automation given AI right now. And actually what I find when I talk about technology is that I challenge that slightly and I say, one of the questions we should be asking is how can we strip away technology to solve the problems? Because some of the most elegant and neat solutions to quite complex problems can be achieved if we remove technology. But in most cases, technology does play some part in an innovative solution. So again, here I want to talk about how does technology combine with human creativity and innovation to achieve the optimum outcome. So let's add technology as a strand. Then, and within AI sits under that technology. It's just another tool that we have in the technology strand right now. And then the fourth strand of my equation, of my definition, which I think is often forgotten as well when it comes to innovation, is context. And this is where the timing, environment, and luck quietly shape the evolution of an idea. Because I think sometimes we could have the perfect idea. That idea may have been backed by leadership who have provided the right environment, the right resources, the right conditions for that idea to have been evolved and iterated and to become reality. People might be behind it. They might be completely incentivized and motivated to get it done. They've even turned that through the technology into a functional prototype. This idea is ready to go. And when you drop it into the real world, it somehow fails. There's something else at play that kills that idea for whatever reason. It could be something like a macro condition like COVID that just killed the ability for that idea to breathe just through bad timing and luck. It could be something internally, like something happens in the business that just distracts everything else, and that for some reason that idea fails. My point there is that there are other factors at play that will determine whether innovation happens or not. Typically, humans tend to innovate in times of crisis more because we're forced to change. Think about businesses that had to adapt their systems to be able to operate online through COVID. There were companies that proactively did that and could have done that for a variety of reasons. Maybe they were trying to get rid of their offices and split and diversify their staff working because it provided more resilience into the system. I don't know. Maybe the office burnt down and they had to find a new way of working pretty quickly. But most organizations wouldn't put the resources into changing for something like that until something like COVID is forced upon them, in which case they have to innovate. They have to find new ways of working. So again, I always look at the macro conditions and micro conditions around innovation. And if a client is trying to bring a particular idea to life, we look at the timing of that and what else is around it that might make or break this idea. Because they're not always negative conditions. COVID was a green light and a golden ticket for some brands and businesses and sectors, and it was an absolute killer and death to certain other ones. So I think you have to look at context, again, quite from a macro point of view, and then zoom right in. So yeah, my definition of innovation is that it's a holistic system that requires leadership, people, technology, and context all aligned. And if you've got all of those things working for you, chances are you've got a good foundation from which to innovate from. And you could pretty much insert any problem or pain point into that system, and I bet you're going to get something good out of it. But if one of those strands is missing or multiple strands are missing, something's going to fall over and innovation will just be talked about and kind of sit in this state of limbo and not move.
Your report, the Guernsey Innovation Report, it set out something of a grounding for where we are now. I'd like to talk about that a little bit. There's a lovely phrase in there, Guernsey caught between optimistic intent and frustrated execution. What do you mean by that? Can you just unpack that a little bit more?
Yeah, so that's the optimistic intent is, again, to my point earlier, everyone is talking about this. Everyone knows that the island needs to evolve and adapt and stay on top of things. We can't just assume that the financial services model that's kept the island afloat for the last few decades is going to endure in the way it has. I mean, history will tell us that very few systems survive time. They all need to innovate and adapt. And it doesn't always need to be groundbreaking 0-1 innovations. But as long as we're changing and evolving and we haven't built a system that's lost that flexibility and ability to change, it should be fine. Like, we're not talking about needing to reinvent the wheel every single time, and we're certainly not expecting Guernsey to reinvent the wheel. That's not what innovation's about. Innovation is about taking small, controlled micro steps to get to that new future. And the more innovative places will try and create that future more aggressively. And I think the optimistic intent is the talking piece. Everyone in Guernsey knows this. This is why we were able to create the report. I mean, everything we've said in the report is just the wrapped up version of what we were told by the people who contributed to it. The frustrated execution piece comes from the inherently most difficult part about innovation. It's actually doing something about it. We know we need to do this, but for whatever reason, we're not going to do that. And the reasons I typically find there are business as usual reasons, because we're so distracted and so busy by what we're doing now that we have no time, resources, or energy to even give something like this a second thought or a different idea. But again, that's quite a short-sighted approach, and you can strip this back to a kind of more traditional business terms. In the case of, does your company or business or team or whatever have a dedicated R&D budget, and if yes, that's a good sign, because you've carved out a percentage of your resources to act as a sandbox, to act as a bit of a laboratory to find the future. That's great. If the answer is no, then are you one of these companies that's just happy to keep up with whatever the market is doing right now, let other companies lead the way and innovate, and you just simply follow on behind? That's fine. Like, again, that works. I know businesses that are, for example, not doing anything with AI right now because they're like, we just don't know what to do. We don't have the resources. We're not the experts. We don't pretend to want to play in that game. We'll let the dust settle and then we'll just adopt to the new models, whether that's a new system, whether that's a new process. We don't need to be leading the charge. And I know others that are like aggressively saying, right, no, we want to be creating the new like AI first business model. How do we take our current sector or our thing and make it AI first? And they're leading the charge there. And they may end up winning the race. Who knows? But there are historical examples of why being first does not always mean you win, but we can maybe come on to that. I think one of the biggest things, and this is not just Guernsey, this is humans in general, the execution part of innovation is really, really hard because it does mean you need to divert resources to something. We're all very busy and we're all running incredibly fast, but we need to proactively and forcefully carve out time to innovate. Otherwise, we just get left behind. And the other piece to this is, which I've already mentioned, is an appetite for failure. And on the one hand, I know Guernsey has built a global reputation across finance by being stable, secure, trusted, and it absolutely must protect this. We cannot, in the aspiration of Guernsey becoming a global innovation hub, lose that trust and stability, which is why I really like the GFSC's digital sandbox, because if the financial regulator can carve out and create a sandbox in order to be innovative, that's amazing, because one, it shows intent. I understand we need to do something, and we've actually created a place for this to happen. The problem with sandboxes is that if they're not played with, imagine having a sandbox in a park where children don't play in it. What's the point? I want to see people being attracted to play in that sandbox. And I want to see people playing properly and not just reinventing what works in business as usual. I want to see new ideas emerge from that. I want to see people playing in the sandbox. I want to see new ideas become successful. And I want to see those ideas be nurtured and scaled so they don't just end at the sandbox. So that good idea doesn't just get suffocated by the existing processes that would have killed it had it tried to grow outside of the sandbox. The sandbox needs to be the first part in a process that allows the successful cases to emerge and scale and be sticky for Guernsey. Because if that business that was tried and tested in Guernsey's sandbox bounces on to the US or somewhere in Europe or back to the UK, it's fine. Like, it's good. We acted as a sandbox. We helped someone else. But what we really want to do is make that business sticky for Guernsey so that Guernsey gets the long-term benefit as that idea evolves and scales. But I want to see failures emerge from sandboxes as well. I want to see that we actually took a bit of risk. We tried this idea. It didn't work. And that's okay, because this is what the sandbox was for. And actually, we can put a positive spin on this failure in the sense that what lessons did we learn from this failure? How can we prove then and make it attractive for people who are coming up with new ideas and say, actually, do you know what? There were 3 cases that failed and were publicized. And I know by virtue of the fact that they did that it's okay for me to go there and fail. That's exactly what a sandbox should be for. So GFSC, thumbs up. I just want to see it. I want to see it follow through now in everything I just described. And I think the island could do that model. I think there are many people on the island who are talking about Guernsey being an innovative sandbox. Quite apt given the sand and the sea and the island, it is a giant sandbox. And I think if we could attract global innovators to come to Guernsey, and then when they're here, realize actually wow, this place is amazing. Tax, setting up companies, access to government, local trust, all these other things that make Guernsey so powerful from an innovation point of view. I think they'd also get the benefit of that. So I know people who are setting up they call them accelerators, but they're actually encouraging people to come and slow down in Guernsey, which I think is fantastic. Slow down, ponder your idea, test it, build it in this wrapper in the sandbox that is Guernsey. I know people doing that, and that's awesome. But yeah, I think, like, how do we get the island more comfortable with taking action? And then I think that would close off that second part about the frustrated execution. And that's exactly why we created Inso. I mean, we were launched at the same time as the Guernsey Innovation Board was released. And I was straight on the phone to them saying, hey, this is perfect timing, because Inso is a set of tools that you can use to turn good ideas into practical outputs. I want to be collaborating with these people who might traditionally be viewed as competitors. Like, I want to smash up competition. And I know that's a slightly naive phrase, but I want to work with people so that we can innovate together. We can share the lessons learned. We can share what worked, what didn't work, and kind of rise all on the same tide, letting natural competition take over. But yeah, like, I feel like the island's on the cusp, and it's doing something about it. There are stacks of good ideas. When we launched the report, there were so many incoming messages, really positive incoming messages, some healthy challenge as well, which was great. We didn't want the report to just be another yes report that everyone just says, amazing, yeah, we already know this. Even we drew some really positive attention from Jersey. And that was part of the report as well. How do we increase cross collaboration between the islands again? to cover all my points I mentioned, sharing what works, what doesn't work, any opportunities, and how do we form stronger bonds? Because I think together we can be bigger than the sum of our parts. Again, that's a lot of blabble right there, but I get into this and I feel passionate about it.
Yeah, it's nice to hear the passion. Within the report, there's a description there of a two-speed economy almost. So like global firms being able to innovate, local firms maybe being a bit more stuck in the legacy systems that they're used to. How much problem is that? How do we unpack that? How do we level that playing field?
Yeah, the two-speed economy piece can also be kind of reframed as the difference between grassroots innovation plus institutional innovation. So again, it's like when you set up a business in Guernsey, there are hurdles that make that more difficult than other places. Needing to use a corporate service provider, different bits of friction that might even in themselves kill an idea or kill someone's ability to say, I've got a great idea, but simply I just don't have the resources to make this happen. And this is where things like Digital Greenhouse are fantastic and they need to be leveraged more, but they need to connect the dots, and we need to create a system where grassroots innovation can properly thrive and grow. And then on the other side is institutional innovation, and here we're talking about big global multinational companies that can innovate in Guernsey by virtue of the fact that maybe the whole company is innovating globally, and therefore systems get updated, and they don't face those same hurdles. And one of our aspirations there was, how do we connect grassroots innovation with institutional innovation so that we reduce that two-speed economy, and so that we innovate together, and the companies that can do it because they've got the resources and the systems and the people and the global spread and the global exposure can feed some of that opportunity back into grassroots innovation, and in doing so, create an opportunity. And I can't go into detail on this one, but we've on the back end of the report, we've got a super exciting opportunity where we can connect a grassroots innovator who has a fantastic idea that he's started prototyping himself. And again, like, this is a perfect case study because of AI and vibe coding. He's been able to take an idea from his head, turn it into something tangible. He's built a solution for a sector that he's not part of, but given the proximity of the island and the fact that through a couple of contacts and through a couple of introductions, you can get access to the right people very quickly. He's been able to validate his product with a bunch of conversations with people that aren't typically in his network. Again, it's like perfect case study. But he's at that point now where he's like, how do I get the credibility with the big players that would maybe be my ultimate client? And how do I, again, this is the perfect example of the two-speed economy. You've got this layer above and this grassroots innovator. And how can we and Inso now has been inserted into the middle because they're also talking to us about how can we be more innovative and how can we come up with some new ideas and how can we lead the charge? This particular company is one of those companies that wants to be leading the charge of the future of their sector. And we've got this grassroots innovator who's given them an off-the-shelf solution. And we're going to be in the middle of that, and we're going to act as the catalyst of that. And let's see where that goes. I mean, I wish I could talk in more detail on that, but that conversation is only just starting to happen now. But it's a perfect example of the report kind of being that catalyst. He was inspired by the report. They were inspired by the report. Those two people may not have met or talked or shared this opportunity in the traditional sense. And Inso has been able to be, like I said, the catalyst for this potential opportunity. And it may go nowhere. That's fine. That's part of innovation, right? We're not going to get everything right. But what we can do is try. What we can do is lean into the resources we have. And that is one of Inso's resources, is the fact that we are just a super connector for people.
I just want to talk about one more of the challenges, and it comes up time and time again, and that's housing. Again, it's been identified by your report. I don't think that comes as a surprise to many people, but I mean, how does a housing problem become an innovation problem?
Yeah, I think, like, again, I don't have an answer for the housing problem. It's like, we need space. Guernsey is limited on space. Houses are expensive to build, and global conditions mean that cost of living is high everywhere, not just Guernsey. More so on Guernsey, given the other reasons. It is expensive to live in Guernsey. We all know that. But that is also its strength in the sense that it keeps it safe and secure and that local trust. So I don't have a solution to all of that. But what we wanted to raise in the report was the second, third order effects of what we call the brain drain. Because if young people can't afford to live in Guernsey, whether they're local or not, it doesn't really matter. Like, look, I don't care about local, foreign, whatever. Like, if young, motivated people who are going to become the future managers, leaders, innovators as they mature, if they can't afford to sustain themselves and their families as they grow in Guernsey, that's a real problem. One, because the island then risks becoming a retirement haven, and again, just human nature. Most older people don't want to innovate. They just want to settle down, enjoy their families, spend what they've spent their whole lives earning, and that's fine. But that's not necessarily going to keep Guernsey afloat for various reasons. The brain drain is a real problem. And it's not linked to housing, but one of the ideas we had to solve that was accept and anticipate that people do want to leave Guernsey at some point. And that's good to go and get a broad, diverse experience of the rest of the world. And maybe these people will move back to Guernsey when their family's a bit more mature, when maybe they can afford to. Maybe it's like the place that they want to kind of grow old in. That's fine as well. But how do we minimize the effect of that brain drain while they're away? And one of the ideas we came up with, and this was modeled largely off Guernsey Finance's the fact that they've got different representations in all the major financial hubs around the world, not only putting Guernsey on the map in their jurisdictions, but also feeding and creating connections back to the island. What if we could create an innovation scout network and somehow incentivize that? So I'm doing this anyway, right? So I'm a perfect case in this. One, I love Guernsey for all the reasons I said at the start. Two, I want to see it succeed for all the reasons that I said at the start. And I have left the island for family reasons, for legitimate reasons. But I also care about Guernsey enough that I want to keep feeding it back into it. So what if you could have like an innovation scout network that was out there, living their lives wherever they were choosing to live around the world, but was somehow incentivized to connect dots and create opportunities and link people up. So, for example, I'm a defense mentor on this year's NATO Diana program, which is the Defense Innovation Acceleration Accelerator for the North Atlantic, Diana. It's a mouthful. I'll say that again. It's the Defense Innovation Accelerator for the North Atlantic. And one of the companies that I have been assigned to as a mentor is a fantastic space startup called Space Power from the UK. Incredible ideas. They essentially do laser charging of solar panels in space, and huge potential. They hadn't even considered Guernsey as a place to be involved in for multiple reasons. Setting up satellite organizations, setting up satellite entities of their company, accessing the investment pool here, even just testing to a degree, right? And like somehow using Guernsey as a sandbox that I mentioned earlier. And so I like to think that, through my conversations and the network I'm building around the world and the opportunities that I'm privy to, that I can at least make sure that they're aware of Guernsey. And so practically what we're doing now through our incredible collaboration with TechX and Inso, so shout out to TechX, awesome, I love what you guys are doing. We are now working together to give Space Power an opportunity that I think is fantastic. So we're going to get Space Power over to the Channel Islands. Maybe we'll do a roadshow in Guernsey and Jersey. And who knows what opportunities that could lead to. But again, like if you could incentivize people who are leaving the island that have an inherent reason to care about it, if we could just somehow, I don't know what those incentives look like. Maybe it's some sort of shared ownership in something that emerges in Guernsey. Maybe it's additional tax relief. I don't know. But again, I'm sure we could solve that problem quite easily. I think something like that would negate the impact of a brain drain without immediately jumping to the fact they need to be lived here and housed here and spend their whole life here and blah, 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 blah. I think we can start thinking of some innovative solutions to the second and third order impacts of the brain drain. And in terms of the housing problem, to your thing, I mean, I've heard of people talking about, building off building new pieces of island, a bit like Dubai style, for more housing. But again, that's not really going to solve the cost of those houses and the cost of living here. Bringing in a ship with rooms on, which makes it sounds like some sort of prison. I wouldn't want to live on a cruise. But again, yeah, like it's a very complex problem. Build up, I don't know. Build down, I don't know. There are very physical constraints to adding more houses to an already small and congested island. So it's and again, when we wrote this report, we checked it against what the government was saying, and Leal's Yard and all these other restoration projects, I think are very important to solve this. But again, I think it's a much wider issue than just being able to afford a house. I think the cost of living and things like that are also very, very, very serious considerations as to why someone would choose to stay or leave. And I think the risk is that if we do nothing, Guernsey does risk becoming a glorified retirement haven, given time. And I don't think the island wants to be that.
We've spoken quite a lot there about challenges, tensions, that kind of thing, but we've also touched on opportunities through what we've spoken about already. I just wanted you to talk a little bit about digital finance. I guess it's been raised, and it was part of the Guernsey Finance Report, part of what GFSC's been talking about as well. Is there an opportunity for Guernsey there? Are we moving fast enough, or do we need to do more?
Yeah, I think 100% there is. Like, for full transparency, I'm not a financial services expert. I'm still working in it, but my personal approach to this, right? I left the army after 10 years of service, and I had no idea about how money worked in the real world, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to start a career in finance, to plug that knowledge gap. I turned up and worked for a local company, and was fortunate enough to be exposed to financial services systems, which gave me a great overview in terms of how finance is delivered from a systems point of view, through CDD, onboarding, custody, trade execution, fund administration, accounting. I got a really broad exposure to finance through understanding the systems that support this mechanically. And the engineer in me loved it. It was amazing to see it. And I was amazed that some of the systems that still underpin the financial services world, the fact that a lot of funds are still sent via fax, fund subscriptions and redemptions are still faxed in. And even from a systems point of view, I was like, that doesn't seem very modern. I didn't even know that was still a thing, but it is. And it's a classic case of just legacy systems and people not actually changing. And some funds have, and some funds haven't. That's fine. Even like the underlying messaging standards between sending various messages, Swift network, and all this sort of stuff. Like when you scratch beneath the surface, it's kind of built on quite legacy tech, and I think that's just a ripe opportunity for new tech. And I'm not jumping straight to blockchain or crypto. And I'm pro crypto, but I separate blockchain technology with cryptocurrency. And I think people need to do that more. So for example, I during my time working full time in finance, the US markets moved to T1 settlement, which means that if I buy an instrument, it's going to settle in my account or whoever's holding that for me in 1 day, and that's down from 2 days that it was before. So T2 settlement was standard. When I joined, I think probably T3 at some point, as the systems and the speeds and the processes allowed that sort of settlement time to endure. And I found it amazing, actually, that we were talking about T1 settlement as being innovative, because ultimately, none of the systems behind that settlement process were changing. You were just compressing the timelines that people had to get the same process done, which, when there's humans in that loop, I think compounds the ability for errors to happen. And so, fine, then you can talk about, actually, well, that compression in itself will force people to automate the process more and use straight through processing, and maybe even now try and integrate AI somehow to try and speed up that process. But I ultimately thought that moving from T2 to T1 was a major global shift. It was a huge thing, but actually it wasn't that innovative for mine. I'm like, why are we not just using this as an opportunity to try and move from T2 to T0 instant settlement using something like a blockchain-based ledger. Swift are doing it now. We all know that many major governments around the world are quite advanced in terms of their central bank digital currencies, CBDC schemes. A lot of people are talking about stable coins and the benefit of that. I mean, I can see it, right? If the whole world transacted through some sort of centralized stable coin, in the same way that Swift supports, I think, maybe like 14,000 financial institutions around the world, that's a trusted, established, fast network. If they were essentially all just trading via some sort of Swift stable coin, would that reduce the amount of foreign exchange? Would that speed up the settlement times? Would it make it easier to account? Probably yes. To my point earlier, this is where we are now in the systems that support the model versus that's a huge change. That's a fundamental change that also disrupts a lot of industries and a lot of things that pay taxes and keep people in jobs. And this is one of those things that can't be leaped there. Now, what I love to see is organizations like Swift from the traditional finance world trying to create this new model. But I also like to see blockchain first companies such as Chainlink, who are pushing it from the crypto side and trying to take their product into traditional finance. I don't know who's going to win, who's going to lose. I don't know where Bitcoin's place in all this future is. My gut feel is that Bitcoin might be the sacrificial lamb of all this, and it may still endure, but I don't think Bitcoin's going to fundamentally underpin the financial services systems of the world in the future in the same way that, say, a Swift does now. But what I do see is stacks of opportunity to integrate blockchain technology underpinned by some form of stable coin or currency, whatever you want to call that, in order to improve operationally how the financial services models works now, not just from an operational speed of transactions. So if I buy something, whether that's an asset or a currency or something else, I want that in my account and in my custody as soon as I can. I don't want to have to wait 2 days for that. But also from a compliance point of view, how can we leverage blockchain technology to improve global compliance, mitigate the amount of fraud that goes on, reduce the amount of fraud, de-link this whole thing that cryptocurrency is only used by bad actors? How can we use blockchain technology to increase the amount of, do away with spot checks and have a 100% check? How do we keep humans in the loop so that actually blockchain technology and straight-through processing combine in a way that automates 99% of transactions and requires human experts to deal with the 1% that just need someone to look at it and move it quicker? I see huge potential for that. And again, to my point earlier, given Guernsey's exposure to all of those parts that I just described, whether that's banking, trading, compliance, funds, accounting, all these components that make up the global financial services system are present and are deeply known and trusted. We have fantastic experts in each of those areas across not just Guernsey, but Jersey, Alderney. Everyone's doing their own part and does it really well. How do we combine that into something that could genuinely create the new system going forward? I think there's opportunity there, to be honest. But a lot of people around the world are already trying it. And it's one of those chicken and egg things, right? It's like, if a client of mine comes to me and says, "Hey, I want to build a network," the first question I ask is, and this was from a really trusted mentor of mine who asked me this when I was trying to build a network with Inso. What is the first person who joins your network? What value do they get? Because if they get value from joining first, and that diminishes as more people go. So whether that's like, if I join the network first, I get access to some unique data source you've got, or, in this case, I don't know, I'm spitballing ideas here, but it could be lower gas fees because I'm the first in the network and it's not busy while there's only me playing and using this network. What do they get? If you can build a network where the first person who joins gets value, then that's highly likely going to attract the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth. And then that network product starts to grow and become credible. Now, the question I think Guernsey needs to ask from a digital finance point of view is, what can it build that will attract those first few big players that are willing to try it? Maybe that's trying it in parallel to their current systems. That does take resources. So imagine you've got a team who's using system A, which is currently the system that's used. You need hours or people, or additional hours for those same people using system A, or different people who can use system B to parallel run this idea, which is great because then what you can do is compare what happened in system A versus the new system B. And actually that helps then generate and understand the ROI, and that help shape people to understand, oh, well, actually, why don't we just use system B and do away with system A? Well, that's what we're trying to do. But that's really hard. A lot of places don't have resources to genuinely parallel run two systems. And again, these are all the kind of systematic constraints as to why innovation doesn't happen. But I always encourage people, if you can parallel run something alongside real test or real scenario data, you will answer your own question there in terms of like, why would I want to change to system B? And until you experience the benefits of system B and use that in a safe, controlled environment, where actually, even if in that example system B fails because something went wrong, you haven't disrupted business as usual because it's still happening in system A. But what that allows you to do is fix what happened in system B, iterate, learn, try again on the next batch of data and see. And at some point, system B will overtake system A.
Looking a little bit to the future, can you talk about maybe just one thing that needs to happen in 2026, 2027 for Guernsey to take advantage of these kind of opportunities?
Yeah, I think we need to have, this is going to sound really bad, but it has to be the way we innovate at the start. We need to slow down and we need to get people talking first. And I think, again, this is why Guernsey is a fantastic place that this can happen, because we love talking, we love socializing. Look at the amount of winter drinks, summer drinks, the amount of gatherings that happen that are sponsored for and paid for by companies. We've got such an amazing collective intelligence already in that room. The problem is that we tend to just talk about the weather, sailing, sports. We need to take what's already there and those gatherings and focus that a little bit and actually make a sport or a hobby out of solving the island's problems together. Because everyone loves the lunch, everyone loves a beer, everyone loves going for a networking event. So we've already got those things in place. We already do that. We carve out plenty of time for that. So there's no excuse to say, oh, I don't have time for it, because we do. And we prove that every year. But we need to start focusing this conversation that the report is hopefully a catalyst of, and start saying, how can we do this together? How can we leverage our big financial services companies' resources? How can we support a grassroots innovator? How can we connect the dots between actually financial services and the education system? How can we support government instead of just moaning about them? How can we get behind the Guernsey, Innovate Guernsey, the new innovation board? How can we do our part in securing our island's future? And again, maybe this is a nice way to wrap it all up, but how can we remember the power of how might we? Let's stop moaning about things. Let's reframe it as a how might we problem to be solved and insert that into all the social activities that we do. Maybe there's even a golden thread between big company A who hosts an awesome summer party, big company B who hosts an awesome summer island or festival, company C who do something else that differentiates them. What if they work together to have a golden thread of solving the same problem in the events that they're already running, which not only unifies the people who are attending those events, but gives them a purpose, gives them something to solve, makes them feel part of the solution to this as this evolves, and makes them more incentivized to actually see it through when they turn up to work on a Monday morning, hopefully with not too much of a hangover. But those are the sort of things I think we could do and inspire very, very quickly if we just came together. And the starting point of that is just getting people talking, which is my job and our job.
I mean, and isn't Guernsey just the ideal place for those conversations to happen? And it loops right back to where we started from as well.
The bit that we didn't get to cover here is what we're, the coverage we've had. I mean, I think, again, to my point earlier, like, I never wanted this report to just be the latest paperweight on top of an already list of good ideas that have been published in reports and other findings. I want this to be a genuine catalyst for change. And if we can lead by example, by one, delivering the report, and two, making sure that we follow up and we don't fall foul of our own thing that we hate? How do we actually take some of these conversations and turn them into ideas? And again, Inso may or may not have a part to play in that. Like if it's a digital product or something else that needs prototyping, sure. But just because it's not something that sits in my wheelhouse, I don't want that to die with me. What can I do to leverage my network and make opportunities happen? And I think if everyone thought a little bit more like that.
That's fantastic. I'd just like to wrap up the podcast there. Thanks for your time.
Hey, no worries.
Thank you for tuning into this podcast. We've got all this way. I'm really hoping that you've enjoyed our work. There's a few things you can do though to support us. Follow, like, subscribe, share, whatever you can do to help spread the word of the Quarry. The other thing you can do is head on over to our website, where you can become a member and really support independent local news.